Alright guys, so we had a technical issue with the recording of the actual one we built, but this is going to be showing you how to build the legs. I'm just going to kind of recreate it on a smaller scale. So this is our long side, our 42-inch long side. It'll set up on its end like this, plywood sheeting, legs underneath. So the way that I'm going to build the legs so that way they stow away is we're going to drill a hole here, a hole into the leg. It's going to be a bolt. We'll have to round these corners so they'll go up into the frame. And then that bolt will be a pivot arm to let the leg come down. Whenever we're done, leg goes back up and it'll store away real flat. So I'm going to go ahead, and the way I marked these is a 2x4 is actually 3.5 by 1.5. So to find the center, we're going to come over 1 3/4. We'll make a mark there. Then we're going to come down 1 3/4 and find our intersection. So now we're down 1 3/4 and in 1 3/4, so that should be pretty well center. And we're going to drill a hole there. Do the same thing on this. This is ripped down, so I have to change my measurements, but if you're just using 2x4s, it won't matter. Then we will drill, put in our 7/16 4-inch bolts, and then we'll make the rounded cuts, and I'll show you why in just a second. Alright, so I exaggerated and drilled this one off to show you how I rounded the other ones, because right now, and this is the way if this is the side, I use 7/16 by 4-inch bolts. You wouldn't have to use that size. It's just what I had handy. Bolt with a washer on it. Then our leg will be on the inside. Then another washer and the nut. So if you can imagine, there will be a 2x4 that goes from this one over to the other side of the frame. So if that's the case, that there's a 2x4 down this way, whenever this leg pivots, that would hit and the leg would actually stop about right there. And there will be sheeting. The plywood sheeting will go on top of here to make the bed to lay on. So if you can imagine again that whenever we try to kick it down, this part, I don't know how that's focusing, but that part would hit the plywood and it wouldn't let the leg go down. So here's the way I solved that problem. Whatever's sticking out, as we turn it, we'll mark it. So mark there, just using a carpenter's pencil. Pivot it a little bit. Marks. Now we'll pivot a little bit. Marks. Anything that sticks out. And I just move it, I don't know, 1/16 of a turn at a time. And once we take this apart, you'll understand what this is doing. So now that should give us a pretty good template to see how we need to trim this so it will spin free without interfering. We'll take our nut and our washer off and take this back apart. It's not so bad working with wood, but if you ever have to drive out a bolt, like with a hammer, put a nut on the threads to protect your bolt. Because if not, as you hit that bolt, it'll mushroom the head and then you won't ever get your nut back on. So put the nut on, strike it with your hammer. So now I'm going to take a jigsaw. You could use a regular hand saw or a circular saw and just have to make a bunch of little cuts. But I'm going to take a jigsaw and cut just inside of that line. It'll give me this rounded edge, and that way as we fold it up or fold it down, these corners won't be hitting the 2x4 on this side or the plating on top, the sheeting on top of the frame that makes our bed. Alright guys, so now we have our holes drilled and we have rounded off the top of our leg. Just for visualization purposes, this is the frame. This would be the end of the frame going to the other side of the frame, and I put a piece of 2x4 on to simulate our decking. That's going to be OSB board. But just to show you why we rounded that, I'm going to put the bolt back in. And I put the bolt in from the outside, that way the exposed threads are on the inside. Now we'll put our leg back on, our nut. Let's see if we can get a little more light in. Put our nut on. And now, whenever we deploy our leg, you can see there will always be a little bit of a gap right there. There's a little bit too much tension for me to do it one-handed, but if we didn't have, if we had this corner sticking out, then as we rotated it, it would hit there and would get stuck. And if we had this corner up, it would hit on this side wall. So quick and easy to round that off, and it doesn't even have to, not that this looks good, but it doesn't even have to be fancy. You could just cut hard angles, like a triangle on top of it or something like that. But that's how our legs are going to go down, and possibly I may drill another hole at the top of the legs to put a pin in, like a hitch pin, or you could put a bolt in. So that way when I put the legs down, put the pin in, and then it can't fold back up and collapse. Or I might put a bunch of tension, really tighten down the bolt, that way it's really hard to move up and down. One of those two things will happen. So now let's go look at the finished project, even though it doesn't look very finished. Alright guys, so this is what we ended up with. This is just 2x4 frame, 2x4 here, 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 one brace in the middle. Our legs fold up into it, that way it stores flat and you can't ever forget the legs because they're bolted to it. And this will sit in the back seat on the way there. I used 7/16 by 4-inch bolts, I think. I'll make a list of everything down below. So you got bolt, washer on the inside, washer, nut. You're going to need at least a 3.5-inch bolt, probably a 4-inch would be easier since you're going through two 2x4s, which are actually 1.5 inches apiece. So if you guys have any questions or comments, put them below. And remember, you need to be prepared to thrive while others survive. Thanks.